Stealing your twin's identity to live their life? This story shocked the entire world. Today, we delve into a chilling case. Is it possible to steal a twin's identity and live their life? Twins have always fascinated people, often attracting attention when seen together. Not only are they a curiosity, but they also have been subjects of extensive scientific research. This research is crucial for understanding the genetics that influence their behavior, spanning from biology to psychology. Many twins report experiencing each other's emotions, conditions, and even physical pain, despite being miles apart. They sometimes even mirror each other's fates. Identical twins, who originate from the splitting of a single fertilized egg, share a profound connection. They bear not only a striking resemblance, but also have fingerprints that are similar in pattern type and line count, although the detailed patterns differ distinctly. The story of twin sisters Sunny and Gina Khan unfolds like a thriller or horror movie script, but shockingly, it's a true story. Separated in early childhood and later reunited, the sisters were overwhelmed not by joy, but by a growing envy and rivalry in everything they did. Each sister viewed the other as more successful and fortunate, driving them to outdo each other at any cost, culminating in a tragic outcome. Sisters Sunny and Gina Khan were born on April 30th, 1974, into a modest family in a South Korean province. The arrival of the twins strained the already tight family budget. Frequent conflicts arose, and when the girls were not even 2 years old, their parents decided to separate. During the divorce, the children were simply divided between the parents. The father took Gina to a neighboring city, while the mother stayed with Sunny in their native province. The former spouses ceased all communication for almost 4 years. For years, the sisters remained separated. In 1980, Mr. Han decided to remarry, but his new partner took an instant dislike to Gina. She gave him an ultimatum: return Gina to her mother if he wanted to marry her. That fall, he complied, leaving Gina with his ex-wife without any explanation or regard for the household's condition, then completely withdrew from his children's lives, offering no financial support. By this time, their mother was grappling with severe alcohol issues, lacked stable employment, and was deeply indebted due to her gambling addiction. Often, she would disappear for days, leaving Sunny and Gina alone with little more than cheap snacks or sometimes nothing at all. The sisters, hungry and scared, only had each other, yet their relationship quickly deteriorated. They fought over everything, vying desperately for their mother's scarce attention, which often escalated into violent clashes involving bruises, scratches, and clumps of torn hair. Their mother never intervened in these fights. She believed sibling conflicts were normal in Korea, as she mentioned years later in an interview. Faced with insurmountable debts and fearing for her safety and that of her daughters, Mrs. Han decided to flee to the United States in the early 1980s. She dreamt of starting anew in California, a place she had only seen in pictures. With only the essentials packed, she purchased one-way tickets to Irvine, California, a city in Orange County. Upon arrival, they encountered numerous challenges. Without any support network, Mrs. Han struggled as she did not speak English, which prevented her from finding employment. Similarly, the language barrier made school extremely difficult for the girls. Survival was a daily challenge for the family, living on a sparse allowance in a land that seemed overwhelmingly foreign and daunting. It took years for the mother and daughters to somewhat adapt to their new environment. Just as things appeared to improve, their mother fell back into her old habits of alcohol and gambling. This time, however, her struggles escalated as she began exhibiting signs of mental disorders. Unable to care for her daughters, she contemplated placing them in an orphanage or foster care. In 1986, a turning point arrived when Mrs. Han's sister and her husband, who were childless, moved to California. After hearing about her niece's plight, she offered to take the 12-year-old twins under her care. Mrs. Han hastily agreed, packing their belongings and abruptly taking them to a bus bound for a neighboring town. She left Sunny and Gina at a bus stop near her sister's house, simply instructing them where to go. Confused and frightened, the girls arrived at their aunt's doorstep, where they were greeted with warmth and acceptance. Life with their aunt and uncle soon mirrored a fairy tale. They ensured the girls wanted for nothing, providing ample food, new clothes, and enrollment in a prestigious school where they were chauffeured daily. Despite these improvements, the sisters' relationship deteriorated further, reaching a breaking point. They attended the same class and competed in every aspect: academics, sports, and social standing. Both excelled as top students, striving to outperform each other. Their rivalry drove them to excel not only in school but also in sports and social endeavors. They meticulously maintained their appearances and became role models for their peers. Yet, despite their achievements and the new life they crafted, the one thing that eluded them was mutual affection and sisterly love. Each sister perceived that the other had the better lot in life, fueling a relentless drive not to be outdone. Sunny, being the more open, friendly, and sociable of the two, found it easier to forge friendships and relationships. Teachers naturally gravitated towards her, and guardians, perhaps unwittingly, showed her greater affection and care. Conversely, Gina was fueled by a mix of anger and resentment. She was determined to outshine Sunny and prove her superiority to everyone, from her peers to authority figures. After high school, their paths diverged dramatically. Gina, feeling compelled to prove her mettle, enlisted in the U.S. Air Force with a 4-year contract. Although physically prepared, she soon found the rigid discipline and lack of personal freedom stifling. Her initial attempt to break the contract failed within the first year. Persisting in her efforts to leave, Gina fabricated a story 6 months later, claiming her father was gravely ill and needed her care, but she couldn't provide the required medical proof. Time dragged on, and her desperation grew in the confines of military life. Her unit was eventually transferred to Lackland Air Force Base in Bexar County, Texas, a pivotal site for basic military training for the U.S. Air Force and Space Force. While many aspire to train at Lackland, for Gina, it felt like a prison. Unwilling to endure another 2 years, Gina devised another escape plan in 1994. She approached a senior officer and disclosed her unconventional sexual orientation, a revelation that at the time could lead to an immediate discharge under the military policies then in effect. Upon her discharge, Gina returned to California and settled in the suburbs of Los Angeles. At 20, she quickly landed a job at a popular casino, earning a base salary of approximately $20,000 a year. Although modest for the time, her tips often surpassed her daily wages. Initially, Gina's life seemed to improve. She was earning well, shopping for branded clothes and cosmetics, renting in a decent neighborhood, and driving her own, albeit second-hand car. However, this upturn was short-lived. She soon developed a daily habit of consuming alcoholic beverages, but her deepest downfall began one night after a shift. Having collected her paycheck and a generous amount of tips, Gina decided to gamble at a slot machine. Within hours, she lost everything. Rather than feeling regret, she felt a surge of painful excitement. She became determined to win it all back, convinced she could hit the jackpot. Each day, after her shift, she would drink and gamble away all her earnings. Initially, she only used her own money, but soon, she started borrowing from colleagues and friends, quickly spiraling into debt. Gina was unknowingly mirroring her mother's past, a struggle with alcohol and gambling that had once forced her family to flee their homeland for America. As her addiction deepened, her borrowing turned into outright theft. She first stole cash from a colleague's purse, who, upon discovering the theft, pitied Gina and did not contact the police. However, when Gina repeated the offense, she faced administrative penalties but escaped with only a fine and a suspended sentence. Later, she even stole from her aunt, the woman who had raised her. By mid-1995, Gina was convicted of theft and sentenced to prison for 3 months, although she was released early after serving less than a month. After her release, Gina had a few more run-ins with the police for public intoxication, but never spent more than a few days in jail. Meanwhile, her twin, Sunny, followed a path of academic and social success. After high school, she attended college and later enrolled in a prestigious university to study law. She earned a scholarship, made connections with affluent peers, and moved in high society circles, living a life that many would flaunt on social media today. Sunny rented a spacious apartment in a luxurious complex complete with a swimming pool and gym, situated in an upscale neighborhood. She shared this apartment with her close friend and fellow student, Helena Smith, who was an heiress with very wealthy parents. Sunny drove an expensive white BMW and dated a handsome, promising young medical student who aspired to become a surgeon. It appeared she had everything she had ever dreamed of, with a promising and fulfilling life ahead. In contrast, Sunny seldom thought of her twin. Since their high school graduation, they hadn't seen or spoken to each other. She was vaguely aware through her aunt that Gina had been in jail for theft, struggled with alcohol, and accrued gambling debts. Focused on her studies, relationships, and perfecting her life, Sunny made no attempt to reach out to Gina. However, in early 1996, Gina unexpectedly reached out to Sunny for help. Could someone truly usurp another's life? In April of that year, Gina called Sunny, asking to meet. The sisters reunited for the first time in years, not with joy, but with a palpable tension. They met at a cafe, where onlookers couldn't help but stare at the uncanny resemblance of the twins sitting across from each other, mirroring images of one another. Gina confided her dire situation to Sunny, revealing she was unemployed, deeply in debt, and homeless, with no one else to turn to. Sunny listened attentively to Gina and truly felt compassion for her plight. Without consulting her roommate Helena, she offered Gina a place to stay in her apartment. That same day, Gina moved in, bringing only a bag of belongings. Despite knowing Sunny was well off, Gina was taken aback by the luxury and comfort of the apartment nestled within a plush residential complex, complete with all one could desire. Gina lived at Sunny's expense for over a month, not contributing financially. During this time, envy and resentment consumed her increasingly each day as she pondered how different her life could have been and questioned what made Sunny more deserving. A wild idea began to take root. Given their identical appearances and that only their mother and aunt could truly distinguish them, what if she could replace Sunny? Gina believed that no one would notice if Sunny disappeared, nor would they miss Gina, who had few friends and was generally disliked by her relatives. This thought soon became an obsession. Gina meticulously observed Sunny's interactions, her mannerisms, how she dressed, and even mimicked her hairstyle and makeup. She began to engage more with Sunny's friends, aiming to seamlessly fit into Sunny's life without arousing suspicion. The sisters continued to clash frequently, with Sunny threatening eviction during their arguments. However, Gina, having nowhere else to go, silently harbored her growing resentment. On August 18, 1996, after a heated dispute, and while Sunny and Helena were out, Gina, fueled by alcohol, ransacked the apartment. She stole all the cash she could find and headed to the casino. Upon their return, Sunny and Helena discovered the disarray and missing money. Realizing what had occurred, they immediately reported Gina to the police. That night, Gina was arrested at the casino, later found guilty, and sentenced to 6 months in prison. After serving 2 months, Gina's imprisonment conditions were relaxed, allowing her to leave the prison for 6 hours daily for work, although she was required to return each night. She complied with this arrangement for 2 weeks before deciding to flee to execute her devious plan. Once free, Gina hitchhiked back to Orange County. As she was not considered a dangerous criminal, the search for her was not pursued with urgency. With no funds, Gina resorted to spending her nights in a homeless shelter in a rough neighborhood. Driven by a relentless desire to usurp her sister's life, Gina planned to eliminate Sunny, but knew she couldn't accomplish this alone. Hiring a hitman on credit was out of the question, so instead, she enlisted the help of 2 teenagers she met in the neighborhood, Archie Bryant and his friend Johnny Syret. She promised them each $100 upon successful completion of their grim task. The trio prepared meticulously, acquiring rope, duct tape, and an unloaded gun for intimidation. On November 15, 1996, after borrowing money, Gina rented a used Ford Mustang. Their plan was set for the afternoon of November 20th, a time when Gina had calculated Sunny would be home alone. To confirm Sunny's presence and scope out the apartment, they purchased a pack of magazines. Johnny would pose as a magazine salesman to gain entry and assess the situation inside. The plan was meticulously laid out, with roles clearly assigned and each member of the trio aware of their duties. However, their scheme did not unfold as planned. On the fateful day, around noon, the Mustang pulled up to the upscale apartment complex. Archie positioned himself discreetly nearby while Johnny approached Sunny's apartment with the magazines. He knocked, and the door swung open to reveal Sunny, unsuspecting and unguarded. Sunny dismissed Johnny abruptly, shutting the door in his face without a second thought. Dejected, Johnny returned to his cohorts and recounted the encounter. Despite the clear sign that Sunny had been alone, they revisited their strategy, not suspecting that she might not be home alone merely because she answered the door herself. After regrouping, the young men grabbed the rope, duct tape, and gun from the car and approached the apartment again. Around 1 o'clock, Johnny rang the doorbell while Archie positioned himself to force entry as soon as the door opened. Unknown to them, Sunny was in the shower, preparing for an important meeting. Her neighbor, Helena, lounging in front of the TV, initially ignored the persistent doorbell, but the insistent ringing eventually compelled her to answer. As she unlatched the door, the intruders burst in, knocking her to the ground before realizing their mistake. It wasn't Sunny. Panicked but determined, they threatened Helena with the gun, swiftly binding her and sealing her mouth with duct tape. Johnny, unsure of their next move, ran to consult Gina, grabbing a bank card from Sunny's dresser on his way. Meanwhile, Sunny, alerted by the commotion, cautiously peered out from the bathroom. Believing burglars had invaded, she grabbed her cell phone from the hallway and retreated to the bathroom to dial emergency services. She managed to relay her address and report the armed robbery before the call abruptly dropped. Moments later, the bathroom door was violently kicked open. Archie yanked a terrified Sunny out by her hair, tied her up, and gagged her before throwing her to the floor beside Helena. The friends braced themselves, fearing torture or worse, as the intruders might demand to know where valuables were hidden. However, their ordeal was abruptly cut short as police sirens announced the arrival of law enforcement just minutes later. Johnny and Gina were still in the Mustang when the police swarmed the house. Initially, 3 officers dashed past them, and shortly after, another patrol car arrived to assist. Given the hostage situation, law enforcement responded with urgency. As one officer ran by, his radio broadcasted the apartment number, overheard by the conspirators in the car. In a rash decision, Gina stepped out of the car and declared herself as Sunny Han. The officer glanced at her but, confused by her claim, instructed her to wait and continued towards the apartment, where his team was already neutralizing the assailant and rescuing the hostages. Inside, the officer was stunned to see a woman, identical to the one he'd just encountered, visibly distressed and crying. When she confirmed her name as Sunny Han, the officer was momentarily dumbfounded, questioning the reality of encountering the same person in 2 different places simultaneously. He hurried back outside to verify the situation, but by then, the Mustang, with Gina and her accomplice, had vanished. Realizing the police were onto them, and after hearing the apartment number relayed over the police radio, Gina knew their plot had crumbled. In desperation, she had leapt from the car, posing as her sister to portray herself as another victim, claiming the actual perpetrator was in her apartment. However, the officer, pressed for time, barely acknowledged her and rushed off. Gina, seizing the moment of distraction, didn't wait around. She and Johnny quickly drove to the nearest ATM and withdrew several $1,000s using the stolen card. With the money in hand, they headed for the Mexican border, planning to swap their conspicuous Mustang for a more inconspicuous vehicle. At the dealership, Gina again attempted to use her sister's identity, but in a slip-up during the paperwork, she inadvertently wrote her actual name. At the car dealership, Gina's slip-up on the paperwork raised suspicions among the staff, prompting them to stall her under the guise of resolving formalities while they discreetly contacted the authorities. Upon her arrest, Gina steadfastly asserted her identity as Sunny Han, claiming her sister was the imposter. The confusion was only resolved through fingerprint identification, yet even with this evidence, both sisters persisted in claiming to be Sunny Han throughout the investigation and trial. At first glance, the Khan sisters might have seemed to fall into the trope of the good twin and bad twin. Gina struggled with addiction and a history of criminal behavior, whereas Sunny appeared to lead a successful, enviable life. However, this surface-level assessment belied the complexities beneath. After their separation, Sunny's motivation dwindled. She had entered a prestigious university, but her academic performance slipped in her second year, leading to the loss of her scholarship. To make ends meet, she secretly took up dancing at a nightclub, a fact she concealed from her social circle. Despite her challenges, Sunny maintained the facade of a perfect life, a stark contrast to her actual circumstances. During the trial, Gina, alongside her youthful accomplices, faced charges of conspiracy to murder Sunny. Gina was also accused of attempting to usurp her twin's identity, a pretense she maintained even in court. The proceedings were both fascinating and eerie, marked by the sisters' synchronized emotional breakdowns, crying, panic attacks, and even simultaneous fainting during a session. Gina contended that she had no intention of killing Sunny. Her goal was merely to reclaim her possessions from Sunny's apartment. She argued that the plan had been exaggerated by Archie and Johnny, who had taken it upon themselves to intimidate Sunny and her neighbor, albeit excessively. The defense emphasized that the gun was never loaded, suggesting that there was no intent to cause physical harm. A year after the botched attempt, on November 20th, 1997, the court concluded the case with its verdict. The jury considered Gina's extensive criminal history, her escape from prison, and her status as a fugitive at the time of the crime. As a result, Gina Khan was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 26 years in prison. Her accomplices, Archie Bryant and Jonia Sairat, received sentences of 14 and 8 years, respectively. In a turn of events, a California State Commission granted Gina's release in May 2018 after she had served 21 years following a successful petition by her attorney. Notably, Gina received support from Sunny, who had found it in her heart to forgive her sister. Upon her release, Gina moved in with her aging mother, taking on the role of her caregiver. The saga of the Khan sisters captured widespread media attention, became a recurring subject on popular talk shows, and inspired several documentaries and feature films. What's your take on the story of the twins? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more gripping tales.